What if I told you the universe isn't ignoring you? It's already whispering everything you asked for. But the reason you can't hear it is because you're still listening for an echo instead of the song that's already playing. There's always a pause in every soul's journey, a strange stillness where nothing seems to move, and yet everything is rearranging behind the veil. Most call it being stuck. But what if it isn't stuck at all? What if it's simply the sacred breath between two chapters of your life? Right now, if you're here, maybe you can feel that invisible gap. The place between the life you've known and the one that hums in your chest. So close, you can almost taste it, but not yet hold it. The quantum field doesn't tick like a clock, and it doesn't cross tasks off a list. It moves like music, not in straight lines, but in waves and echoes, layered and intelligent. In this unseen symphony, every version of you already exists. The you who has already healed, the you who already found love, the you who already built the dream you're still only imagining. They are not living in some distant future. They are vibrating now, on a frequency you haven't fully tuned to yet. Here's the truth no one taught you in school. Manifestation isn't about creating something from nothing. It's not forcing, not chasing, not demanding. It's about aligning with what already is. And the moment you see that, your entire reality pivots. Maybe you've been told to write affirmations, to visualize harder, to make lists of goals. Those things aren't wrong, but they can trap you in a subtle prison, the energy of not yet. Because when you're always chasing tomorrow, you're quietly declaring, it's not here now. But the quantum doesn't listen to your words. It responds to your state of being, not what you say, not even what you do. It listens to who you are, vibrationally, breath by breath, moment by moment. Think about it. You've felt this truth before, haven't you? Moments where life softened, moments that unfolded so perfectly, it felt less like you created them and more like you remembered them. Those moments happened because you stopped trying. You stopped straining. You were simply in tune, emotionally, mentally, energetically, with the version of you that was already alive in the field. But most of us were trained to interrupt that harmony. We say we want peace, yet we hum with resistance. We say we want alignment, yet we walk with doubt. And the most dangerous thought of all creeps in, if it's not here yet, maybe it's not meant for me. That single belief doesn't just delay manifestation, it collapses the entire frequency. Here's how the quantum truly works. What you feel is true now becomes the blueprint for what you experience next. Not because the universe is testing you, not because you have to prove your worth, but because reality is sculpted by resonance, not requests. Picture this. You're holding an old radio, longing for your favorite song, but instead of tuning the dial, you scream at the static, play it, play the song. Of course, nothing happens. Not because the song isn't out there, but because you haven't tuned in. Your desires work the same way. The life you ache for is already playing. It's not your job to beg for it. It's your job to match it. And that matching requires more than pretty thoughts or written affirmations. It asks for a deeper surrender, an internal collapse of the old self. The one who believed they had to earn it, prove it, or endlessly chase it. It asks you to step out of the loop of lack and into the vibration of already having. Here's the piece no one ever told you. The universe doesn't echo what you say you want. It reflects what you are. If you whisper, I want abundance, but quietly feel the weight of scarcity, the field will hum scarcity back to you. If you cry out, I'm ready for love, but hold hidden resentments like stones in your chest, the field mirrors resistance. But when you stop declaring, stop asking, and simply become the version of you who already lives the thing you're longing for, the field has no choice. It must respond. Because to the quantum, you are the signal. And when that signal stabilizes, the wave collapses, not by chance, but with the precision of math, snapping reality into the version that matches you. That's why this very moment matters more than you think. Not because you need to do more, but because the field is already listening. And the question it's asking isn't, what do you want? It's whispering, who are you being? Let's lean in deeper, because knowing the field mirrors your vibration isn't enough. You have to see what frequency you're truly broadcasting, not the one you intend to send, the one you're unconsciously humming, day after day, breath after breath. What's the story you rehearse every morning when you wake? Do you practice the script of lack, the delay, the endless waiting? Or do you rise and walk as if the desire is already fulfilled, even if the 3D hasn't yet caught up? This is where most souls stumble. They mix signals, they meditate, visualize, write in journals, but then spend the rest of the day thinking, feeling, and acting like the version of themselves who still doesn't have it. And that confusion, it creates interference. The quantum can't respond clearly to a broken transmission, so it hesitates, it waits, it echoes back static. Here's the sting that might set you free. The field isn't late. You're just tuned to a station that cannot broadcast what you've been asking for. And tuning, that doesn't happen through force. It happens through identity. When you send out the signal of the you who doubts, checks, waits, compares, you stay locked in the loop of what already is. But when you shift into embodiment, everything begins to rearrange. This is why every spiritual tradition, no matter how different, always circles back to one truth. Be it now, not fake it, not force it, but feel it real. And from that state, let every action you take be born from alignment, not from lack. Because at its core, quantum jumping isn't an escape. It's not mystical fantasy. It's an act of emotional coherence. It's becoming so vibrationally stable in the new version of you that the field can't help but obey, because it cannot not. The wave collapses to match the observer. And when your observation is no longer polluted by doubt, by resistance, by the contradictions you used to feed, the shift stops being a question. It becomes inevitable. So let me ask you this. Who would you be if you stopped searching for proof? How would you move if the desire was already a memory instead of a wish? What choices would you make if there was nothing left to prove to anyone, not even yourself? These aren't poetic musings. These are quantum tuning forks, because every time you ask them, you step into a new frequency, a frequency where you stop begging for signs and start transmitting the signal of the outcome you once chased. And that's where the magic happens. Not because the universe suddenly rewards you, but because you finally stopped rewarding your old identity with all your attention. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you no longer need proof, it arrives. Why? Because your signal is clean, your field uninterrupted. You're no longer whispering, I want this, but I don't believe it. You simply stand in the quiet, steady state of, I am. And the quantum, neutral, intelligent, unflinching, mirrors that back without hesitation. You'll notice it first in the smallest of ways, not with fireworks, but whispers. People begin treating you differently, though they couldn't tell you why. Opportunities you swore didn't exist suddenly slip into view. You feel strangely calm, even though nothing outside has changed, because everything inside you has. And that shift within you, that is the manifestation. Everything that follows after, the money, the love, the breakthroughs, are just reflections, like light touching a mirror. The mirror doesn't create the light. It only shows you where it lands. And when you see this, you stop chasing shadows. You stop asking, when will it happen? And you begin declaring, it's already chosen me. In the next breath of this transmission, we'll dive into why so many still feel empty, still feel uncertain, even after they've done everything right. But for now, let this settle into you like water sinking into soil. What you seek isn't somewhere far away. It's already here, waiting for you to meet it on its own frequency. And the moment you match it, it has no choice but to become your next reality. There's a pattern quietly shaping most lives. It doesn't shout. It doesn't storm. It whispers. It shows up in the moments you hesitate, the moments you second-guess yourself, the moments you almost say yes to something that feels expansive, but don't. It's the voice that mutters, what if I'm wrong? What if I look foolish? What if nothing changes? That voice isn't fear. It's the leftover imprint of an identity that hasn't yet caught up to your vision. Because here's what the self-help books don't always tell you. Your old self will not surrender easily. It was built to survive, not to thrive. It was sculpted by repetition, shaped by old wounds, and beliefs handed to you like heirlooms. And every time you begin to vibrate at the level of your desire, that old self panics. Because your frequency no longer matches the reality it knows how to control. And when the ego senses its grip beginning to loosen, it clings harder. It resists. It tightens its hold on the familiar. It dresses itself up as logic. It hides behind caution. But what it's really doing is broadcasting confusion into the field. One foot pressing the accelerator, the other slamming the brake. This is why you can do everything right. Visualize, affirm, meditate, and still feel stuck. Because while your actions point to your desire, your energetic identity is still bowing to your past. And the quantum, always precise, always neutral, responds not to your effort, but to your essence. Let's make this real. You say you want abundance, but you still make decisions from fear of losing. You say you're ready for love, but you flinch at the thought of being fully seen. You say you want freedom, but you feel guilty every time you rest. This is the mismatch, and it's not about blame. It's about sight, seeing yourself fully, clearly, compassionately. Because once you see the contradiction, you can begin to collapse it. The key isn't more effort, it's coherence. Emotional coherence, mental coherence, energetic coherence. When your thoughts, feelings, and actions move in unison, not once, not occasionally, but again and again like breath, the quantum doesn't hesitate. It responds instantly. Not always with loud miracles, but with quiet, undeniable shifts. Subtle, powerful, irrevocable. You'll see it in the way your words change, in the way your shoulders finally drop in rooms you used to shrink in the way people respond to you, not because they changed, but because your field did. And this isn't theory. This is what happens when you stop broadcasting the vibration of the past and begin living as the transmission of the future. Studies in quantum coherence, heart-brain synchronization, frequency entrainment, they're all pointing to the same revelation. Your inner state arranges the outer world. This isn't sorcery. This is physics. A heart soaked in gratitude broadcasts a measurable field, a rhythm of coherence so strong it bends the invisible fabric of matter. A brain softened into theta waves cracks open the door to non-local intelligence, to thoughts, visions, and guidance that do not come from you, but through you. A body no longer hijacked by survival stress stops being a shield and becomes a transmitter. So ask yourself, quietly, honestly, where am I still sending static? What version of me takes the wheel when no one is watching? Which beliefs am I still feeding with my thoughts, my habits, my doubt? Because the field doesn't just respond to your mountaintop moments. It hears your whispers in the valley too. It feels the parts of you think are invisible. It mirrors not the dream you speak out loud, but the reality you believe is safe to hold. And for most people, this is the hardest truth. They don't feel safe having what they want. Not because they're broken, not because they lack will, but because they were trained, programmed to survive without it. And to receive it would mean laying down the identity they once built to keep themselves alive. So here's your invitation. Let yourself grieve that identity. Let yourself mourn the version of you who thought waiting was safer than receiving. And then step by step, not into action, but into alignment. Because the moment you stop clutching the old story for protection, you free the field to write the new one. Now let's talk about the part of the process that almost no one talks about. The part that makes most people turn back. There's a moment before every quantum shift, and it's rarely pretty. It doesn't come wrapped in signs or synchronicities. It doesn't feel like magic. In fact, it feels like the opposite. Like you're unraveling, like nothing is working, like you're further from your dream than ever. This is where most people quit. They call it failure. They call it misalignment. But it's neither. It's the collapse point. It's the exact moment the old timeline is crumbling, and the new one hasn't quite clicked into place. You're not being punished. You're not doing it wrong. You're standing in the in-between. the quantum void. And in that void, it's common to feel unmoored. Confusion, exhaustion, even grief. Not because something bad is happening, but because your nervous system is letting go of a reality it once believed was necessary for survival. You're detaching from the gravitational pull of your old self. And like a rocket breaking Earth's orbit, you need extra fuel to break free. Here's the paradox. The more aligned you become, the harder your old identity fights to stay relevant. Why? Because ego cannot survive in uncertainty. And the quantum field, the space of all potential, is nothing but uncertainty. It's unformed, undefined, infinite. To the part of you that craves control, this feels terrifying. But to the part of you that remembers, it feels like home. So how do you navigate this space? First, by knowing this breakdown isn't chaos, it's reorganization. Your energetic blueprint is being rewritten. Neural pathways are rethreading, emotional set points are recalibrating. Your frequency is rising, and with it, the patterns, people, and places that no longer match you begin to fall away. Not because they're bad, but because they're complete. This is the moment reality tests your coherence. Not with obstacles, but with echoes. Old triggers surface. Familiar distractions reappear. And here's the tricky part. They feel familiar. They feel safe. They even feel comforting. But they are not invitations. They are temptations to choose again, to choose presence over pattern, stillness over reaction, faith over force. And this choice, it's not made once, it's made over and over again, in silence, in discomfort, in solitude. You are not being asked to be perfect, you are being asked to be faithful to your new identity. Even before there's any proof. Because the field doesn't shift when your desire burns hot. It shifts when your identity stops shaking. You don't receive your desire because you want it badly enough. You receive it the moment you no longer need it to prove who you are. When you stop using it as evidence that you are worthy. When you stop clutching it as if it will complete you. And when you simply become the version of you who would naturally live that reality. From that place, the quantum field isn't delivering something new. It's just mirroring back what you've already claimed vibrationally. So, what does this look like in real life? It looks like sitting in the discomfort without making it mean failure. It looks like holding your frequency even when the outside world hasn't caught up. It looks like trusting the collapse, because only when the old dissolves can the new take form. And that's when subtle signs appear. Your words soften, your breath deepens. You notice signals you once ignored. You take action without overthinking. You stop forcing, and life starts flowing. Not because the universe suddenly changed, but because you did. Here's a practice for this stage. When doubt comes, don't fight it, witness it, bless it, and say softly out loud, "This is the part of me that's dying, so the real me can rise." Because when you name the echo, it loses its grip. You're not collapsing, you're shedding. You're not lost, you're in transit. This, right here, is the threshold of the quantum jump. It's the moment you stop identifying as the person who's trying to manifest, and instead you step fully into the version who already lives it. When that shift locks into place, the field moves, reality bends, time rearranges. Comment below, "I am," not just as words, but as a frequency, a vibrational declaration that even inside the void, you are no longer waiting. You are becoming, and the field is listening. By now, you might notice something strange. Once you cross this collapse point, a deep calm begins to surface. Not because your world has caught up yet, but because your inner world no longer demands it to. This is coherence. This is stabilization. It's when your frequency stops begging for proof and begins radiating conviction. And when that happens, truly happens, the quantum field begins weaving a new version of reality around you, not as a reward, but as a mirror. Yet even here, many people stumble, not because they lack desire, but because they haven't learned how to sustain the frequency they've touched. And that is the difference between a momentary shift and lasting transformation. Sustaining a new frequency isn't about perfection. It's about returning again and again. It's about building what we might call energetic endurance. Think of it like tuning an instrument. If you tune a violin once, it might sound exquisite for a while. But with time, with pressure, with use, the strings drift, the tone wavers, and unless you retune, the music loses its clarity. Your frequency is no different. You may reach a moment of stunning alignment through meditation, through gratitude, through visioning, and feel invincible. But life goes on. People test you, emotions rise, doubts whisper, and if you don't consciously retune, you slip back into the familiar vibration. So, how do we stay in tune? It begins with something simple yet sacred: frequency hygiene. Just like you brush your teeth each morning, you must tend to your energy every single day. This isn't about obsessing over vibration or frantically checking, "Am I aligned yet?" It's about staying in relationship with your frequency. Ask yourself quietly, what am I consuming? What am I rehearsing in my mind over and over? What am I tolerating that contradicts the reality I say I want? Your thoughts aren't neutral, they are instructions. Your focus isn't random, it's a signal to the field. Your self-talk isn't private, it's a broadcast. If your inner world doesn't reflect the reality you desire, you're not manifesting. You're simply memorizing the past. And here's where it gets truly quantum. The field doesn't just respond to energy, it responds to the consistency of your energy, to the vibrational signature you reinforce, you layer, you repeat, again and again. This is how timelines stabilize, not by wishing harder, but by vibrating longer. Think about it. A weak radio signal drifts, it fades, it's swallowed by static. But a strong, steady frequency, it pierces the noise. It locks onto the station. It doesn't let go. Your desires aren't looking for intensity. They're looking for coherence. So ask yourself, can you hold the signal? Can you keep your tone clear, even when the evidence hasn't shown up? This, right here, is where most people give up. Not because they failed, but because they stopped broadcasting. They looked around, saw no confirmation, and assumed nothing was happening. But quantum manifestation isn't like planting a seed and watching it sprout in the soil. It's like planting in a dimension where time doesn't behave the same, where the harvest is already grown, but your frequency must walk the corridor of alignment to reach it. And that corridor, it's not made of miracles, it's made of daily choices. You choose your station with every reaction, with every emotional response, with every word you speak, with every boundary you hold, with every single moment you choose to remember who you're becoming instead of who you used to be. And here's the truth. Remembering your new self is not denial of the present, it is the creation of the next present. That's how reality shifts. Not by fixing the old scene, but by outgrowing it vibrationally. Stay in frequency long enough, and the old chapter simply stops being compatible. It doesn't end in chaos. It doesn't require drama. It just fades. Like a song you no longer feel like playing. It simply doesn't feel true anymore. And then, one quiet morning, you wake up and realize the thing you used to beg for, you now expect. The version of you who used to chase, you now embody. The energy you once reached for, you now radiate. And when that happens, the quantum field doesn't just respond, it realigns. The opportunities, the people, the timing, the circumstances, they don't arrive by luck. They were always there. You simply tuned into the version of reality where they could finally meet you. So if you're standing in that in-between space right now, where the old world feels faded, but the new one hasn't fully arrived, hear this. You are not stuck. You are stabilizing. And every time you return to your chosen frequency, the field moves and your new trajectory locks in a little more. This isn't magic, it's physics. Consciousness collapses possibility. Coherence holds it in place. And there comes a moment in every true spiritual evolution when you stop chasing the outcome and start embodying the energy. You see, what you once called manifestation was never about summoning the thing. It was a bridge to remembrance. You weren't pulling something into your life. You were awakening to the version of you who already lived inside it. And that realization changes everything. Life stops feeling like a problem to solve and becomes a frequency to express. This is the state mystics whisper of, that sages point to, that quantum science now dares to measure. In the words of Dr. Joe Dispenza, when you change your energy, you change your life. And when you live from that energy, not conditionally, not occasionally, but as your new identity, you collapse the boundary between desire and reality. What you want isn't summoned, it's matched. What you long for isn't requested, it's remembered. This is the final leap. You stop trying to manifest because you've become the living evidence of the field's response. Think about it. A magnet doesn't try to attract, it just is. A tuning fork doesn't beg to resonate, it just does. The sun doesn't explain its warmth, it simply radiates. When you live as the version of you who already has, already knows, already vibrates, you become a living coherence field, and the quantum responds, not because you're demanding it, but because you've aligned with it. This is why every true spiritual teaching speaks of surrender, not as weakness, but as the doorway to power. Because when you surrender, you release resistance. You stop performing for the universe and start collaborating with it. You don't broadcast effort, you broadcast essence. And that signal is unmistakable. From this place, manifestation becomes less about asking and more about receiving. Less about proving and more about allowing. You don't hustle for worthiness, you rest in it. You don't monitor results, you trust momentum. You don't chase timing, you become timeless. And here's the beauty. This isn't something reserved for monks or mystics or the few who sit on mountaintops. It's available right now, in the sacred ordinariness of this breath, in the quiet choice to let go of needing and step into knowing. But here's the truth. You'll forget, we all do. You'll have days when the old identity resurfaces, when doubt feels louder than destiny, when nothing seems to shift. And that's okay, because forgetting doesn't erase the shift. It only invites you to remember again. And each time you remember, your signal sharpens, your identity strengthens, your alignment turns magnetic. That's why we're here, not just to speak or teach or pour words into your feed, but to build a resonance field with you, a space where your frequency can stabilize, where remembering becomes easier, where transformation stops being something you watch and becomes something you are. So now, take a breath and let this truth land. Everything you desire already exists in the quantum field. It's not waiting to be created. It's waiting to be recognized, to be matched, to be lived. You are the bridge. You are the conduit. You are the field. If you feel that truth, if you're ready to collapse the illusion of distance and step into the version of you who already holds it all, write these 2 words in the comments. I am. Not just as a phrase, as a frequency. And if something in you stirred, or opened, or shifted while listening, know this isn't an ending. It's a recalibration, a continuation, and you are not meant to walk it alone. Subscribe, not just for more videos, but to anchor your frequency again and again, to let every story, every teaching, every transmission we share remind you of who you are until remembering becomes your natural state. You've stepped into the field. Now, let the field respond.